Councilman Perilou, welcome back. We've missed you. Chairman Otan.
Here.
Councilwoman Boudreaux. Councilman Lorraine. Parish President Chesso.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carleen. If everyone could please rise, we'll be led in the invocation by Mr. Daniel Lorraine and the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Jim Wendell.
I'd like to say that give a shout out to all the veterans that are fighting whatever.
Lord in heaven, hallowed be your name. Kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Thank you all for attending. Just real quick, I will reiterate, as I did the last meeting, we are continuing to abide by the governor's executive order, limiting to 50% building capacity, trying to do social distancing, which is why you see the chairs spread out. We encourage everyone to wear a mask. They are available out in the hallway as well as hand sanitizer stations. So I thank everyone for participating and assisting us in the minimization of the spread of COVID. That said, I'll move right on to item A, approval of minutes. I entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the June 29, 2020 regular session. So moved by Mr. Perilou, second by Mr. Wendell. Any discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes by a vote of 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Bo Melvin. We have no item B, no item C, so we'll move right into item D, which is engineers, architects reports, and I see we have a couple in the audience. Just check, make sure the mic's on.
Good evening. I'm Jack Plazos with PCOLA and Associates under this mask. I'm not sure if you can recognize me.
We recognize you, Jack.
So I don't have a slide presentation. I just wanted to kind of briefly mention a couple of updates on our project and our community center project. Heather couldn't be here. We spoke today, and I do have a brief update from Duplantis Design Group on the community center. So, that being said, on the Choctaw Levee rehabilitation and permitting, I'm sure you remember that we submitted a joint permit application back in May of 2018. We also received, about a year later, mitigation assessment from DNR and worked with the Corps of Engineers on a permit application which is not yet complete. So we're in discussions about that permit application with the administration and also with DPW, Public Works, regarding a possible right-of-way survey that may need to take place. Secondly, like I mentioned, on the Gustav and Ike CDBG project for the Lafourche Community Center here in Lockport, onshore construction, you may know, received substantial completion on May 11th. Inspections were held in early May. A punch list was developed. Most of the items on that punch list were completed through May and early June. And a fire marshal occupancy certificate was issued to the parish towards the end of May. No real deficiencies there. Keys were turned over, and the retainage payment is still outstanding, pending lien certificate and a few punch list items. That's my report, and I'll kind of read to you briefly the memo I got today from Duplantis Design Group. The bulk of the closeout documents were submitted from onshore yesterday, and Duplantis and their consultants are reviewing. There would be a walkthrough to verify that all punch list items are complete tomorrow, with the exception of the extra basketball goals and partition curtain that I think you might remember was added towards the end of the project. Those items are not yet installed, to my knowledge. Once that's done, we'll go back and review. Technically, the 45-day lien period finishes up at the end of this week, so as soon as possible, we'll try to get all of those items processed. So, any questions on that mouthful of information?
Anyone have any questions? I'll just briefly comment on the community center and let everyone know that I did discuss with Archie holding the first meeting after the COVID Zoom meetings at the community center, and that was an option until we were able to make it happen here. And then secondarily, I know that the parish president had advised that the community center was going to be utilized as an overflow for evacuations that were happening on Grand Isle a couple of weeks ago, provided the Raceland Center had filled up. So I know it's starting to get taken into consideration, it's getting pretty close. But other than that, I thank you for the comments, Jack. If no one else has anything, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Have a great evening.
Any other engineers or architects? Here we go.
Craig Como with Baroque and Benor Engineers and Consultants, 209 Canal Street, Metairie, Louisiana. At each of your places, I have two reports. One is a double-sided, single-page report of the same information that's in more detail in the multi-page report. We also have a presentation that matches the multi-page report. The scope of our work for Lafourche Parish is dealing with hazard mitigation grant program, primarily the HMGP program, which comes out of disaster dollars, as well as the flood mitigation assistance grant program, which comes from pre-disaster and non-disaster grant dollars. We are working currently with the parish on managing 3 projects that are under construction, one of which is the 1786 or the Hurricane Ike project. We have one that's coming out of flood mitigation assistance grant for 2016, and we have a grant coming out of flood mitigation assistance for 2017. In 2018, FEMA also announced an application, but Lafourche Parish did not get selected for any grants during that year. And as a result, the parish then initiated a contract with us to actually help them with the application for the 2019 grant year. And we'll go through the details of that in a second. These grant programs are located projects throughout the parish. If you look at the map that's provided, it shows dots where everything is located. You will notice that I do not provide addresses, as the addresses of these properties are protected under the Privacy Act, but it does give a pretty good idea of how things are broken down. We have a number of properties in Cutoff, Lockport, and in Thibodaux as the main areas, and then we have a couple of areas in Bayou Blue as well. The process for doing home elevation grants, and this is really for your information, is that it's a really multi-step process for the homeowners. When they're elevating their houses, they are actually selecting the contractors. So part of what we do is we work with the homeowners directly to actually get them through the process of doing the federal procurement guidelines. They are required under federal law to obtain at least 3 bids from contractors for performing the work. Once they have selected a contractor, then it is kind of picks up with our responsibility of working with that contractor to ensure that they design a project that meets all grant requirements. Once the contractor has designed a project, and it's kind of unique in this regard, is that what we have worked with the contractors and homeowners to do is to ensure that they don't sign a contract until they actually get plans in hand that meet all of the grant program requirements. Once the contract is signed, the contractor has about 21 days from contract signing to mobilize to the site. And then the work that the contractor does once they obtain the permit should last somewhere between 3 to 6 months. Once the house is elevated, the homeowner then has to produce a copy of their National Flood Insurance Declaration page indicating that they are still covered under flood insurance, as being covered under flood insurance is a perpetual requirement for that property once they participate in these grant programs. The homeowner then also signs a 100% completion document indicating that they agree that the work is 100% complete. What's also unique about these projects is the contractors work on milestone payments. So there are only 3 payments made to the contractor during the duration of the project. The first one comes after mobilization, the second after the house has been elevated, and the last one only comes once everything is 100% complete. One of the reasons for designing the program this way is to ensure the contractors complete in a relatively quick period of time, because all of their profit and overhead is covered in that final payment, so they're incentivized to get to the work and get it complete. So the first project that we worked for the parish, we started on in 2016 under contract, and the work actually did not begin until 2017. It was for the elevation of 4 properties, of which 1 property chose not to proceed. The reason the property chose not to proceed is that the homeowner had a cost share match. Under these grant programs, under the HMGP program, federal government covers 75% of the cost, and the other 25% is the responsibility of the homeowner. The reason 3 properties did move forward is they also had a match coming from the Community Development Block Grant for low and moderate income families. So they were able to get 100% of their project covered under grants, and as a result, they were able to move forward. The construction for those projects began back in 2017 and then completed in the early part of 2018. It did take us a little while to get started with these projects because at that time, the parish had a relatively old agreement, and it is the parish that signs an agreement with the homeowner for the funding of the project. And what we found is that the agreement that the parish had at that time was sort of outdated and included descriptions of work and activities that were no longer part of the hazard mitigation grant program. So it took us a little while to get the agreements with the parish agreed to and finalized. But once that work started, the final projects, those 3 projects finished in May and July of 2018, with 100% of everything being complete. So therefore, the one project, and this is something that you will see quite often through these projects, is that the one project that did not move forward was because they were not eligible for a cost share match. Again, we've provided a breakdown of the project cost. All cost in this project, because the 3 projects that did move forward were actually 100% funded, 75% from FEMA, 25% from CDBG. This project didn't cost the parish any actual funds. Now, on today's agenda, item number 13 is an extension of our contract for this project. And the reason is that until FEMA closes out this project, you need us under contract to help with any questions that FEMA and or GOSEP may have. At this time, we are fully funded on this project under our contract, so there's no additional cost needed for that agenda item. The next project that we did was the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Program for 2016. This application had 8 properties in it, and in the application, once again, most of the properties were 75-25% cost shares or 90-10% cost shares, where FEMA would pay 90% of the project. Unfortunately, most of these homeowners did not have the funds to complete the project once it was awarded, so therefore only 3 of these projects have moved forward so far. We currently are in communication with a 4th homeowner who is interested in trying to complete the work, but he recently came into some money that would allow him to cover his cost share for the project. Again, these grant kickoff meetings occurred in early August of 2018, and the 3 projects that have completed have actually completed within the last 6 months. So again, this is when this program is really moving smooth and we're not having to deal with contract issues on getting the language right, this allowed these projects to finish in about 3 to 5 months. Again, I've provided a breakdown on the properties themselves. You'll notice that one homeowner out of the group that did not proceed forward did not want to be bound to the perpetual flood insurance requirement under this grant program. So as a result, they chose to withdraw. There's one homeowner who's currently working on selecting a contractor, one that cannot meet the federal cost share, and then we had a 4th homeowner who was not eligible once the project was awarded because they let their flood insurance expire. Again, we're providing a breakdown on the project cost. And again, in this case, if the for the percent share that is covered by the homeowner. So keep in mind that these cost shares, where we say that there's a non-federal share, is 100% covered by the homeowner. So once again, does not cost the parish any money for performing this project. The next project is the 2017 flood mitigation elevations. This project had 7 properties in it, and once again, of the 7 properties, only one has actually moved forward to construction and completed last month, where the permit was closed. We do have a second homeowner in this group that's also looking at the possibility of moving forward because once again, they have been able to come into the cost share requirement. But if you look at the table, you'll see we have one property that's withdrawn who was not eligible because the property was previously mitigated. What had happened is for a number of years, this homeowner was actually being charged higher flood insurance rate because they were considered a repetitive loss property. But somewhere in the past, the property had actually been demolished and rebuilt. And when we met with the homeowner, all of a sudden we discovered this. The parish had not caught this when they initially submitted the application. We caught this, worked with Darla Dewey in the permits office, and she was able to get them listed with FEMA as a mitigated property. So they did not have to proceed and were able to reduce their flood insurance rates. However, the rest, one homeowner did not want to elevate to the required height. As you know, the firm maps or the flood insurance rate maps for Lafourche Parish are still in preliminary stage and have not been officially adopted by the parish. As a result, those preliminary maps, which are still under discussion, have some higher base flood elevation requirements for some of the homes in some of the communities. One particular community is Cutoff, which currently is operating under a letter of map amendment, which makes the base flood elevation lower. But on the preliminary maps, it actually has the base flood elevation about 4.5 feet higher than it is on the effective map. As a result, homeowners, as you can imagine, don't want to elevate to 8 feet above grade and be the eyesore in the neighborhood. So as a result, they're just kind of sitting and waiting and see if the grant expires before they're able to make a decision. The rest are unable to meet the federal cost share match, and once again, the actual cost of the work at this point is still there. Please note the PM construction monitoring cost is always based on a percentage of the grant, and it does not become complete and actual until after the work is complete on all properties. The last project is the 2019 FEMA Flood Mitigation Elevations and Pre-Disaster Mitigation Grant Program. That application cycle was announced on August 26, 2019. The application period began in September of 2019 and ended in January 31st, 2020. We worked with the parish to submit 2 applications. One was submitted under the FMA program for 4 properties with a federal cost share of 96%. The reason it's not 90 or 100 is it's a combination of 4 properties, 2 of which are 100% covered by FEMA, and 2 that will be 90% covered by FEMA. The conversation with the 2 that are 90% has already occurred, so they have a rough idea of what their 10% cost share is, so that way they can start saving that money now. About 3 weeks ago, FEMA announced which projects they were planning on funding. The one with the 4 properties was selected for further review by FEMA. There was an additional application which was submitted under the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Grant Program, which included 7 properties. These properties, none of which were repetitive loss or severe repetitive loss, all had a 75% cost share, as well as some non-residential properties were submitted. In that group, FEMA determined the application to be eligible and all properties in there to meet the requirements. However, the state of Louisiana was only allocated a maximum of $4 million, which is the maximum per state. Unfortunately, this project would have put them over that maximum with the other projects that were selected. One of the things we need to make sure of is in each application cycle, there needs to be an advocate with the Governor's Office of Homeland Security, which from the parish, who would push their projects to ensure that GOSEP identifies their projects as higher ranked projects than others. And in the future, those same 7 properties could easily make it through with an additional advocate at the state level. We anticipate that FEMA will provide the final approval on those 4 properties that were selected for further review in either June or July of next year, and those projects can begin construction probably by August. We do provide a couple of resources to help the parish in managing these grants. One is a grant management system that we've developed for our own use, but is accessible to the parish. The parish's grant writer, Lionel Lagarde, has access to this system to be able to see where any of these projects are at any time during the process. The second thing is we do provide a couple of screenshots just so you kind of get an idea of what information we're collecting about the property as we're managing these projects. We also use a document management system in this program, which provides both Lionel easy access to those documents as they're requested by either GOSEP or FEMA. The other thing is recently there has been a change in procedure where initially under these grant programs, the parish would pay out these contract values for the home elevation directly to the homeowner ahead of receiving any funds from the state. Based on 2 audits that were conducted by GOSEP within the last year, they made recommendations to work on a process that we have utilized with some of our other clients, which allows the parish to actually submit the invoices to the state first, get the funding drawn down, brought to the finance department, then the finance department cuts the checks to the homeowner for the work. That has actually improved the situation quite a bit. We have seen in situations where all of the payments were made ahead of time, it can sometimes take 6 to 8 months for FEMA and GOSEP to approve the payment, simply because you're trying to track all the documentation for the project as a whole. When we're submitting them more incrementally, GOSEP is able to review them and approve them many times within about 2 to 3 weeks. The document management system, again, allows the parish easy access to all documents, and they are also available within the grant management system itself. So if you look at the next page, the overview of open text docs that are available, anything associated with the application, construction, or even the post-application, which includes the maintenance of flood insurance, can be obtained in here. And so anytime GOSEP's asked for an updated flood insurance policy, we've actually had that document in hand already because it's been available through this system. I know that's a lot of information. Again, this has been our first presentation on all the projects we're working, but do you have any questions?
Yeah, I would just recommend in the future, if maybe you could present this on an annual basis instead of trying to group it up into multiple years. I know some of these have been closed out and have been going for quite some time. Mike?
Yeah, you've been here, you just, you've been at every meeting, gave it to us all at once. Do you know if there's still, in my district years ago, before I became a councilman when I was a kid, there was a house that was torn down, and I understand they got federal money the federal government bought the property. We actually upkeep it and cut the grass on it.
Yeah.
Is that still available? I don't think anybody could bill on it for like 99 years or
So
something.
that is correct. So there is an acquisition program under these same grant programs. So a home can be either elevated, the parish can acquire it. The problem with the acquisition piece is the federal government does not provide you maintenance money. So therefore, your long-term maintenance of that property now becomes something that you as a parish consume. The third option is a reconstruction program. The mitigation reconstruction program allows a property that has repetitive losses to actually be demolished and rebuilt at a higher elevation. The challenge with that program is the dollars that are available for doing that activity is limited or capped at $150,000 for the federal cost share. So what ends up happening, if you kind of look at cost per square foot on construction, is a property that hits about 1,200, 1,300 square feet is about the maximum size structure that fits under that particular grant program for demolition and reconstruction. Anything beyond that, while the grant will still cover it, means the homeowner will have to pay some out-of-pocket expenses to cover the balance for any work that's done.
Do you see people, I mean, I understand people want to stay where they are and try to evacuate and things like that, but are you seeing people taking advantage of that, trying to just start over and move out of town or move up to
People
buy?
will do it, but what I have found overall, and this is true because we have done this same work here in Lafourche as well as in Terrebonne, St. Charles, City of New Orleans, it's really the parish that has to be the motivated one to want to take on that additional cost for maintenance.
Sure.
If you would imagine, once you start doing it, like you said, you're doing that for 90-something years, that's a big expense that's not covered by the federal government.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mike, just to answer your question, so we probably have I started doing acquisitions back when I was working for Joe, so we probably have about eight or 10 properties that were acquisitions that we actually tore down the house. And in most cases, you guys, within probably 6-8 months of the action taking place, probably approve a lease. Most of these properties are leased out to typically the neighbor, who put boats or campers or something on it, who park it. We can't build anything on it forever, but we typically lease them to the neighbors. That way they cut the grass. We don't have to send anybody, the guys from the field office or anything like that. So that's how we typically handle those properties that are acquisitions.
If I was to be aware of a property like that that's been done 25 years ago, and that neighbor wanted to lease it, that's something I would bring to y'all?
They can call us.
Because they're
Typically,
complaining about the grass.
Yeah, we typically lease them to them for like $1 a year,
All right.
and it's like a 10 or 15-year lease.
They can't do anything with it, it's just it's almost like a right-of-way, but they need to keep it up.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. That's all we got. We appreciate the presentation. Any further engineer architect reports? Okay, there being none, we'll move to item E, public wishing to address the council, public hearings, agenda items, et cetera. Ms. Carleen.
Ms. Deidre LeBlanc, if you'd approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Ms. LeBlanc, please remember you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy, ma'am.
Well, my representative's not here today.
Yeah,
Is Mr.
yeah.
Dillon here today?
Can you, I need your name and your address for the record first, ma'am.
Oh, my name is Deidre LeBlanc, 214 Bayou Vista Drive, Thibodaux.
Very good, thank you.
So Mr. Bowles not here, Mr. Dillon's not here.
Mr. Dillon is in the audience, ma'am.
What?
Mr. Dillon is in the audience.
Oh, okay.
If you want to address the council, address the chair, and then if there's any answers that the parish president would like to allow Mr. Dillon to answer.
All right, I ain't never done this before.
No problem, just address your concern to us, and then we'll see what we can do.
Okay, I want to thank Mr. Bowe and Mr. Dillon for coming out to my property, because water's getting very high in Bayou Vista, because we have gravity drainage, and the 40 ARPA is full. Now, when the 40 ARPA is full, I ain't got nowhere to go.
That's full.
And I want to, ask if there's any way, we can drain the 40 ARPA somewhere else, so it can, because everybody from Nichols to Raceland drains into the 40 ARPA, and they're building new subdivisions all the time. And Mr. Bowe came to my house at midnight one night. He was checking the pumps in Thoroughbred, so he was out and about. So he came because I texted him because the water was getting high, and he saw how high it got. I got an empty lot next to me. It was halfway up the lot, and we have a problem getting the right of way from Mr. Byron Talbot with the empty lot behind. They said they did a clean out last year, but they got a cypress tree the size of the Empire State Building behind my neighbor in the middle of the ditch. So, I don't know how they cleaned it out if the tree's still there. I just want something done before a flood. It's come close. And I flooded for Katrina, so I don't want to go through that again. I was living in Kent at the time. But anyway, so I just want something done. So when I first moved there, the water in the ditch in the back was only about this deep. Now it's about this deep because the 40 ARPA's full, it's not draining. Is there anything that can be done?
Understood. Mr. President, do you want to address it? Do you want to talk to her afterwards, get her name and number? It sounds like you've already been out there.
Yeah. Hey, Ms. Deidre. Dylan's been out, I know Bo's been out, and she's right. The main problem we have is that the water's gonna equalize in the ditch to the level that the 40 is. So until we can figure out a way to push some more water out of the 40s and drop it, that's the hardest part. Even putting a pump and damming it off really didn't help her, because we can only pump so much into the 40s. So, we're trying to get another one-time right-of-way from Mr. Byron to go out and do some cleaning, clear the grass and the trees. But the deeper we dig it, the more water we're going to put in, because it's going to equalize back in. So we're trying to put our heads together with some much smarter people than we are. So we are working on it, Ms. Deidre. I can't tell you when or if we're going to ever have a solution, but we're going to continue to work on it to try to help you guys out.
Is the North Lafourche Levee District aware of it and they're assisting?
Yep. Dwayne's part of the the people who are much smarter than we looking into it.
Yeah, so I would encourage you, in addition to, if you would have the time to attend a North Lafourche Levee District meeting and address that board, and specifically Mr. Dwayne Bourgeois with the North Lafourche Levee District, because they're the group that we engage when we run into major issues such as that. And I'm sure we can get you that information, the parish president, someone can get you that information. Yeah. But North Lafourche,
Definitely tell me.
but thank you for enlightening us. We appreciate you coming and address the council.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, Ms. Carleen? Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item F, public hearing and ordinances for ratification. I entertain a motion to open public hearing. A motion by Mr. Window, second by Mr. Paraloo. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes by a vote of 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Bo Melvin. Item 2, ordinance amending ordinance number 1123, reducing the speed limit from 15 miles per hour to 5 miles per hour on East 65th Street, Cutoff, Louisiana, Ward 10, District 8, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit and children at play signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Councilwoman Boudreaux, second by Mr. Window. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this ordinance? 1 time. Anyone from the audience? 2 times. Last call for public. There being none, we'll move it to the council. Would anyone from the council like to discuss? We'll move it to, you want to discuss, Mr. Daniel? Go ahead, Mr. Daniel, you have the floor.
I just want to know if there's any other streets in the parish at 5 miles an hour. I know I got a couple in my district at 10, and that's pretty slow. 5? I mean, if that's what they want, that's fine, but I guarantee you can walk faster than 5 miles an hour.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone has that information. Ms. Boudreaux?
So the street we're talking about, it looks more like a driveway between 2 homes, and it's a very narrow street. 2 vehicles could not pass at the same time. So I think that's why they wanted the 5 miles per hour. There are a few streets towards the back of the street, but it's not a very long street. It's a very close street. So that's why they wanted that 5.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreaux. Okay, any further discussion from the council? There being none, we'll move this to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 3, ordinance to install no-through traffic signs on each street entering Sugar Plantation Subdivision from Highway 3185 and Talbot Avenue, Thibodaux, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 3, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of no-through traffic signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Councilman Grove, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this ordinance? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Anyone from the council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 4, ordinance to install 15 miles per hour, $500 fine, speed limit signs on each block of Millstone Drive, Kettle Drive, and Miller's Row, Thibodaux, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 3, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of 15 miles per hour, $500 fine speed limit signs, with the fine being posted along with the speed limit on each sign, and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Councilman Grove, second by Mr. Jones. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this ordinance? 1 time. Anyone from the public 2 times? Anyone from the public 3 times? There be none. Anyone from the council would like to discuss? We'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 6, ordinance to establish a 20 miles per hour speed limit on Robin Street and to also install 2 children at play signs, with 1 sign to be placed at the beginning of the 100 block of Robin Street and the second sign to be placed at the end of the 100 block of Robin Street, Thibodaux, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 1, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of speed limit and children at play signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Moved by Councilman Jones, second by Mr. Adams. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this ordinance? 1 time. Anyone from the public 2 times? Anyone from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council would like to discuss this? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 7, ordinance amending ordinance number 3600. Okay. All right, no problem. I tell you what, I'll entertain a motion to deviate back to items number 5. Got a motion by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perilou to deviate back to item 5, of which I skipped over. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That being Mr. Melvin. Sorry about that. I'm seeing double vision between this mask and these glasses. Item 5, ordinance to install 2 no semi-truck through traffic signs with 1 sign to be placed at the beginning of Thoroughbred Drive and 1 sign to be placed at the beginning of Supercharged Drive, Thibodaux, Louisiana, Ward 3, District 4, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, providing for the placement of no semi-truck through traffic signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof. Mr. Perilou will move on behalf of Mr. Melvin. Mr. Wendell will second. Anyone from the public would like to comment on this ordinance? 1 time. Anyone from the public 2 times? Anyone from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That being Mr. Melvin. I entertain a motion to return back to the regular agenda. Got a motion by Mr. Wendell, second by Mr. Perilou. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That being Mr. Melvin. So I'll move back to number 7. And I do thank y'all for catching that. Item 7, ordinance amending ordinance number 3600 and amending and reenacting Chapter 24 of the Lafourche Parish Code of Ordinances as it pertains to libraries, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Lorraine for the administration, a second by Mr. Wendell. Any discussion from the public? 1 time. Any discussion from the public 2 times? Any discussion from the public 3 times? Anyone from the council? Mr. Lorraine.
Yeah, all you're doing is changing it to, instead of the president of the council, the parish president.
Yep, I saw that scratch out. Thank you for that, Mr. Lorraine. Also, Archie, if you happen to want to say something, please raise your hand because I can't see the light on your mic. I'd look that way, but I can't see it. Okay, if there's no further discussion from the council, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. I entertain a motion to close public hearing. Motion by Mr. Perilou, second by Ms. Boudreaux. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item G, proposed ordinances. Number 8, proposed ordinance to install no 18-wheeler signs on Park Drive, Thibodaux, Louisiana, Ward 1, District 3, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, requiring the placement of no 18-wheeler signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof by Councilman Rowe. Item 9, proposed ordinance to install no through traffic signs on West 11th Street from Highway 3235 to LA1 via West 11th Street in La Rose, Louisiana, and from Highway 1 to Highway 3235, La Rose, Louisiana, Ward 10, District 8, Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana, requiring the placement of no through traffic signs and providing penalties for the violations thereof by Ms. Boudreaux. Item 10, proposed ordinance accepting the subdivision known as 12 Cedars Crossing Subdivision Phase A into the parish system. This will be by Mr. Perilou on behalf of Mr. Melvin for the administration. Item 11, proposed ordinance approving the holding of an election in the Juvenile Justice Commission of the Parish of Lafourche, State of Louisiana on Saturday, December 5th, 2020 to authorize the levy of a special tax therein. This will be moved by Mr. Rowe and Ms. Boudreaux, co-sponsors on behalf of the administration. Item H, resolutions. Number 12, resolution accepting a grant in the amount of $65,328 from the Department of Justice for COVID-19 response and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. This is by Mr. Wendell for the administration, second by Mr. Perilou. Would anyone from the council like to discuss this? Mr. Lorraine, your light's still on. Anyone from the council like to discuss? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 13, resolution approving amendment number 3 to the agreement between Lafourche Parish Government and Baraka and Bernur Engineers and Consultants, L.L.C. for the elevation of 4 residential structures to extend the contract time and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said amendment and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Grove for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Would anyone from the council like to discuss? There being none, we'll move it to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 14, resolution approving amendment number 1 to the contract between Lafourche Parish Government and Lafourche Animal Hospital to provide veterinary services on an as-needed and as-called-upon basis for the Lafourche Parish Animal Shelter, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said amendment and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Ms. Boudreaux for the administration, second by Mr. Wendell. Would anyone from the council like to discuss? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 15, resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the Lafourche Parish School Board and Lafourche Parish Government for use of facilities and equipment during a declared emergency, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said agreement and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Perilou on behalf of me for the administration. Second by Mr. Wendell. Any discussion by the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 16, resolution approving an agreement between B&L Transportation Incorporated and Lafourche Parish Government for emergency bus use equipment, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said agreement and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Perilou on behalf of me for the administration. Second by Mr. Wendell. Any discussion by the council? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 17, resolution approving a midstream encroachment emergency agreement with Williams Pipeline for the Pointe-Aux-Chene levee project, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said agreement and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Wendell for the administration, second by Mr. Perilou. Any discussion? Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know this was covered in kind of the synopsis we've begun to send you guys for the agenda every week. But this was for Tropical Storm Cristobal, just some emergency work that we had to do on a small little levee in Pointe-Aux-Chene that kind of blew out for Barry. We had some issues and caused some flooding there. So in anticipation of what we thought was coming, we executed a contract later on down the road. On the agenda, you'll see it for Frogco Amphibious to do the work. But there was a Williams pipeline that cut almost directly through this levee. So we signed an emergency right away with them to be able to put that material on top of their pipeline and encroach upon it. So that's what this is, just covering us from the emergency declaration event.
Thank you for that enlightenment. Any further discussion? Mr. Rowe.
And they wouldn't be responsible for any portion of that? I mean, if they cutting through it? No? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Grove. Any further discussion? There being none, we'll move item 17 resolution to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 18, resolution appointing 1 member on the Fire Protection District Number 3 Board as the chairman, Mr. Lorraine, for the administration. Who do you have, Mr. Lorraine?
First of all, I just want to say that Mr. Lawrence Monick was chairman of that board for 22 years, and he basically stepped down. And then you got, I think they appointed Reggie Petrie. They recommended Reggie Petrie. But if you go back and you look at Ordinance 2096, back in 1993, it says that it was amended in accordance to state statute to read a board of commissioners consisting of 5 residents located within the boundaries of Fire District Number 3. The board shall consist of 2 representatives appointed by the town of Golden Meadow and 2 members appointed by the council. And those 4 select a chairman. So I don't see, I'm gonna have to try to get this fixed, because we don't vote to appoint a chairman on Fire District 2, Fire District 1.
We do ratify their so.
Yeah, you ratify their members, but not the chairman.
Actually, it comes to, for District 2, we do that for the chairman. It comes to the council based on their recommendation.
Right. But you never do the chairman. We don't tell the hospitals who's their chairman. We don't ratify that. We don't ratify the ambulance district, and we don't ratify all the other fire districts. So, but I mean, we'll go along with what happens if they recommend somebody and the council doesn't go along with it?
So I would respectfully ask Mr. Archer if you could look into that and just let us know on each of the, because each board we know is different. Some are set up by state, some are not. So I agree.
It tells you by ordinance that the 4 select the chairman. We haven't done this much because Monick's been there 22 years. And again, I want to thank him for his service, and I guess he ran out of gas, you know, but
Yes,
I'll
we
go
do-
ahead and move on this and we'll fix it later.
Okay, so he moves on, Mr. Reggie Petre, and yes, we do want to
Sure.
thank Mr. Lawrence. So I got a second by Mr. Wendell. Any further discussion by this council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 19, resolution appointing one member on the Fire Protection District Number 3 Board representing the town of Golden Meadow. Mr. Lorraine for the administration. Who do you have, Mr. Lorraine? Nominates Mr. Troy Dufresne. Can I get a second? Second by Ms. Boudreaux. Any discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 20, resolution approving the purchase of a refurbished 30-inch portable pump to be used throughout the parish in the amount of $75,000 and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Rowe. Any discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 21, resolution amending resolution number 20-128 that approved the hiring of attorneys and/or their law firm when necessary to perform any and all legal defense services for Lafourche Parish Government and to provide compensation in accordance with the Louisiana Attorney General's fee schedule and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Adams for the administration, second by Mr. Jones. Any discussion? Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just note that this is the same list that you guys approved probably last meeting, with the addition of one attorney, that being Ms. Jill Kraft. So we didn't put Mr. Walt on there because he's handling this one case. This is attorneys we can go to at any point. He handles something very specific. We're adding Ms. Kraft in case we ever need her, mainly for employment-related issues.
Got it. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Grove.
We're not adding, the motto and, Frederickson? Those aren't two new ones that are underlined? Looks like we're adding 3. And that was my question too, because they're out-of-town attorneys, Baton Rouge, Denham, 2 from Baton Rouge and Denham. But I didn't know if they must specialize in something that we're missing. Okay, all right. And, I know sometimes you can hire an attorney and they bring somebody else in. Does somebody have to be on the approved list for if Michael, okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. Mr. Ogeron, you can go ahead and speak, Parish Administrator.
Mr. Chairman, Parish Administrator, to answer your question specifically for those 2 attorneys, they work with LOCAR Claims Administration for workers' compensation. They specialize in workers' compensation specifically to second injury fund, which helps us save a ton of money when we do have certain workers' compensation injuries and whatnot. That's why we needed to add them in there.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Mitch. We appreciate that info. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 22, resolution approving a cooperative endeavor agreement between Lafourche Parish Government and Thibodaux Parish Consolidated Government in reference to the maintenance of Supreme Drive in Thibodaux and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said agreement and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Any discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 23, resolution approving the rental of 2 marsh buggy excavators and 2 operators through Farolco Amphibious Equipment for emergency work needed for the Pointe-Aux-Chene Levee project in the amount of $23,080 and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Wendell for the administration, second by Mr. Perillo. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 24, resolution approving change order number 1 to the project title removal and installation of lights at the Golden Meadow Adult Field to increase the price by $35,500 and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said change order and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Lorraine for the administration, second by Mr. Perillo. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Girl, go ahead before we vote.
Okay, so, on this, obviously they changed the whole thing from what they originally bid on. I mean, this was a $42,000 job that we got a change order for $35,500. That's almost like, at what point do you need to go out for another bid, maybe? That just seems.
Mr.
How- I
President,
mean, did
put a
they,
comment
did
on
you-
it? The
nothing was
specific-
discovered in the bid that like, man, we really need to rip these poles out or something? I mean, I don't get it.
Not, I mean, there's not really a threshold that says at a certain point you have to rebid it. I mean, I think at some point we were probably pushing it pretty close, but it's easier just to change all of this in than have to rebid it and go through all that expense again.
It's just, it seems high. I mean,
Yeah,
it caught my eye because you're going from 42 and you're adding 35,000. It's like, man, what'd the other guy come in at? You know?
From the experience of dealing with ball fields, a 42 was a low bid to begin with for the removal, and so I think they were pretty low. And I know typically we add a lot of stuff and make them do things differently, and that adds a lot of costs.
Well, I didn't see the original bid, so
Yeah.
there's no way of knowing, you know, what they're
Right.
doing. I mean, it's showing us they're removing them. I suppose that they were gonna just try to put lights on the old posts. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Mr. Lorraine, you got any follow-ups?
Yeah, the only thing what happened was, they were gonna change the lights, but you got 4 rotten poles, so you're not gonna put the lights on a rotten pole.
That's typical.
So that's where you at.
Yep, that's pretty typical too, what happens. That's a pretty big job on those lights, and they're so important for safety reasons. It's so important to have good structure. Very good. Any further discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, 8 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 25, resolution approving the purchase of one 2020 85G John Deere excavator in a total amount of $86,562.74 for the Department of Public Works and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Perillo for the administration, second by Mr. Wendell. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item 26, resolution approving amendment number 2 to the agreement between Louisiana Housing Corporation and Lafourche Parish Council, Office of Community Action for the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, LAHEAP, grant period 10/1 of 2019 through 9/30 of 2021, fiscal year 2020, and authorizing the parish president to sign, execute, and administer said amendment and any and all relevant documents. Moved by Mr. Jones for the administration, second by Mr. Adams. Any discussion? Mr. Lorraine.
Yeah, I just want to say that, community action as a whole is doing a lot better than ever before. Everybody seems to be getting along and things are moving. The only problem I have, and I've had a few complaints, is that they only go once a week for the lights in South Lafourche. And I guess once a week in Thibodaux and once wherever. I think that instead of just one person handling this, whoever works there should be able to do that. I mean, think about this, you're going for some help, and once a week, on Mondays, now let's say they got 20 people in there. I doubt if they could service the whole 20 people, so they would have to wait another whole week. So I would just ask if the administration all would look into that and see if we could get more hours to that, because people that go there are people in need. And a whole week, that's a long time. You know, I'm not complaining about, I just think more people should get involved with distributing the LAHEAP funds. And maybe Mr. Jones might want to say something up.
Thank you, Mr. Lorraine. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, Mr. Lorraine, I agree with you. I spoke with Ms. Gazray on that, because I had calls last Thursday and Friday that people went to get service, and it was only on Monday. So maybe she's here, maybe she can answer it better. So hopefully we can start giving that 4 days a week.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any further discussion? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by... Any further discussion by the council? There being none, we'll move it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence. That absence being Mr. Melvin.
The director is here.
She's welcome to come and say, but I'm not a mind reader. And this is, normally the discussion is for the council, so the council can recognize somebody. In resolutions, y'all know we move along with this unless the parish president. But I would absolutely love for her to come up and address us while we had this. Just let us know what's going on. I mean, it's great. And I apologize if I cut you off. If you ever want to address on a specific item, please let us know beforehand, or have the parish president, or even Ms. Corleen before the meeting know.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Chairperson, my name is Dion Gasry. I'm the Executive Director. I really didn't know this question was going to come up, or I would have, so I apologize. But I did speak to Mr. Jones, and because of certain issues with the COVID, and we decided there's only one person doing it right now. She's the only person on the grant who has 100%, she's 100% on the grant. So she goes out to South Lafourche on Mondays. She stays here to do Matthews. She has a report that's due to the state, so on Wednesdays, she has to do that, and on Thursdays, she goes to Thibodaux. But within that, in Thibodaux, she serviced over 25 people, and here on an average of 25 people. But when I looked at and I gave Mr. Jones the list, the most she's ever served in South Lafourche is 12. Some days she has 2, some days she has 8, some days she has 5 on that one day. So I asked her what had maybe some of the issues. Because of the COVID, we can't allow people in the building. So we did a plan to have them send all their documents in, and then only thing they would have to do is sign it, which makes it go faster because they don't have to sit there and wait for the documents. They would send the documents, she would send the documents they need to sign. And a lot of times, they're not sending their required documents, so they have to reschedule.
Mr. Lorraine, you got any follow-up comments on that?
No, the only thing I'm gonna see is that if somebody, doesn't make it on that day, then they gotta wait another whole week. And then you saying there's hardly nobody down there, but
I can show you the list.
I would like to see it,
Okay.
you
Because
know?
I sent it to Mr. Jones.
Send it to me by email.
I sure will.
And I just think that, what happens if she doesn't make that day? Then you gotta wait another. I'm just trying to get this thing
Right,
rocking and
and
rolling, man.
I totally understand. We could look at the grant, but right now, the way it is, she's 100%, so nobody is legally allowed to do what she does. 'Cause-
Okay,
So,
so
I mean, they had, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but we can look at this, because before, and if I'm right, Ms. Anita, they had issues with the percentage, because if I'm on it and she's on it, she could be 95 and I could be 5, I'm using that as an example. And so there was issues with the percentage, with the salaries that were being paid. It was a conflict with the state and the parish.
But you got to have a better backup system,
Right.
because if she's on it, let's say she's sick, she can't go to work.
Right,
What happens there?
right,
I mean, not every day that you're gonna be well.
right.
People get sick, or some of the people missed it, then they gotta wait. The point I'm trying to make is just try to make it better.
I understand. I'm gonna look into it.
I'm not criticizing.
No, I understand, because that's corrective criticism, and that's what we need.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, Deanne, the way the percentage is in finance is 100%, Eric is getting paid 100%,
Yes, sir.
Lahit.
Yes, sir.
But CSBG can allocate people to work in that program. They don't have to get paid out of Lahit.
Right.
They can get paid out of CSBG, but
But-
still do the work. The
Right.
problem is then when if Erica, let's say she's sick,
Right,
and she out for 2 weeks, and people need service in the parish, I think everybody that working in community action should be versed into working into all departments.
right.
And
And I totally understand, and I agree with you, because I asked that question, but the issue is by her being 100%, they can do the paperwork, like if the client comes in and bring it, they can fill it out, but they can't put it in the system to get service, so she would still, if she's out, they would still have to wait for her to put it in the system. But like I said, we can relook at that.
But the legwork can get done. The legwork can be done where it's ready to go, sounds like.
but
Right, but if, like he said, if she's out 2 weeks and stuff, they still wouldn't get service until she comes back.
and that's what I'm talking about. I still think that should be somebody else with the password, yourself. If that person is out sick and people need service, let's say the disconnect is on the 25th.
Right,
And that person is sick. So who gonna pledge in the system?
right,
I think somebody else should have that password and be trained and be ready to go.
Okay.
To keep the people going in the parish. And at this time, with COVID and nobody's working, we're gonna have a lot of that.
right.
So I really believe in 100% backup.
Okay,
Thank you,
I
Mr.
can
Jones.
look into that.
Thank you, Ms. Deidre. We appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, brings us to item I, motion. Number 27, motion to appoint the Daily Comment as the official journal for the Lafourche Parish Council for the period from July 1st, 2020 through June 30, 2021, at the rate of $5.50 per square of 100 words. Can someone move on this? Moved by Mr. Windham. Can I get a second? Ms. Boudreaux. Any discussion on this motion? Mr. Grove, go ahead.
Is this same price per, square? Okay.
We have no negotiating ability, but Mr. Adams.
Yeah, I mean, I know we go in newspaper, but isn't there any other way we can go? Because I don't know
By law, no,
anybody.
sir. By law, we cannot. State statute.
Okay, because I mean, it's not getting the people anymore because nobody subscribes to the newspaper.
No, 100% agreed, and Mr. Bagala was gonna assist us, deceased State Rep Bagala was gonna assist us in trying to get that changed. I believe that some of our other state reps have, engaged, and they've gotten pretty hard pushback by lobbyists. It's unfortunate because we all agree we're spending this money and it's really not going to any benefit. But for us, as a government agency, we're mandated by state statute, and then, so until the state legislature changes that, and hopefully they will, because it is kind of ridiculous. Nobody gets it.
Yeah, is there any other way we can do it besides the newspaper, like add an additional, to get it out to people? Because I mean, like I say, just to try to get it to more people. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, we could try to figure out another way besides newspaper.
Yeah. Yeah, we can continue that discussion with the administration, but yeah, it's a sore subject and has been for a long time. And just for the public, we spend a lot of money in these fees right here on an annual basis. $5.50 for 100 words doesn't seem like a lot, but when you annualize it, it's a heck of a lot. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that absence being Mr. Melvin. Item J, Parish President, Department Heads, Directors, or Managers Report presentations and or updates. Item 28, Finance Representative to present the monthly financial report as required by state agreed upon procedures for May 2020. Are we going to have someone speak?
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
So we did, as you guys check your emails, you got the financials. Renita's here to ask any questions. In July, we'll do a very in-depth PowerPoint for you guys, kind of show you the totals of the first 6 months versus what you guys have gotten the last, I guess, month and a half, 2 months. Via email, but the one particular point of interest I want to share is we got our royalty figures for the month of May. We operate a month behind. Historically, we've seen, somewhere around $170,000, $180,000 typically for the month of May. We collected a whopping $27,000. So it's gonna. Like we produced last week in the PowerPoint, the budget was a little bit of a mess to begin with, but this isn't going to help very much. I would expect now that we see $40+ a barrel of oil, we should see that uptick in June. But it was, we expected to see a drop, but it was a little bit of a shock when we got the royalty reports this month. So I just wanted to point that out in particular.
Pretty dismal. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Renita since she's honored us with her presence? I will comment that on the audit, while we're talking about finance, the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office is authorizing quite a few public agencies extensions due to COVID, and it looks like we're going to have to be one of those. They're not going to meet the deadline date, so that they are preparing the language to submit to the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office for an extension. They have by far and large completed their work that they're able to, so I do thank Finance for assisting them with that. I know they've asked for a lot of information, as well as the Council Clerk's Office. But they are waiting for what they call component units, which is all the different districts, such as ambulance districts, et cetera. They're waiting for that information to complete their audit. So until that happens, we can't have the exit interview with them, and they can't submit it to the Louisiana Legislative Auditor's Office. So we will have an extension filed, and hopefully in short order it'll be completed. Anyone has any questions regarding finance or the audit? If not, I'll move to discussion, and we'll just everybody can ask their questions there. So item K, discussion. Mr. Lorraine, you have anything, any follow-up, any last comments on this meeting?
Yeah, I just want to ask Mr. Chasson. I think the Bayou Lafourche Freshwater District's in charge of the lilies. We have a ton of lilies in South Lafourche. Seems like the little bit I got to see from the intercoastal heading north, they've all been sprayed. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think they collect the millage in South Lafourche. And that's 2 mills. And that's about $1.5 million. So see what you could do about getting them to spray some of them lilies, because I got a lot of people talking to me about that.
Yeah, I'll call Mr. Mulbrew in the morning and see what we can work out.
Do that and see if we could get something there. I don't know what's the deal with them in the port or whatever, but we have to get something done with that.
Yes, sir.
And what about the coronavirus? I mean, I watch the news all the time. I see things are opening. One says don't test. You won't have as many have it. Seems like it's spreading more and more and more. And so I don't know. I don't know what to tell the people on that.
So
You got anything on that?
Yeah, I was talking to Councilman Grove before the meeting, and I think we need to change the way we represent the numbers as well. You know, I think what the governor's looking at is correct, because he's looking at a statewide percentage or a statewide number, so that $50,000 number that he reports every day when he does his press conference is probably pretty accurate. I think today we hit a little 1,030 something cases, if memory first serves me right.
1,034.
Yeah. So, but when you look at so we get a list every day of the positive cases, people's names, addresses, and phone numbers that we keep for first responder data. That's turned over to Sheriff's Office and 911. Katie and Cammie at 911 and the Sheriff's Office do a great job of tracking these people and their addresses and figuring out, you know, if they truly are. And I think I maybe touched on this once before. So you can have a person from Thibodaux who has a 70301 zip code. They're going to be classed to Lafourche because the state recognizes that as a Thibodaux zip code, but they may be across the line in Assumption. So Katie and them break down the data for us by making sure the addresses are actually in Lafourche Parish. And then now we've begun to take everybody who's been on the list for 21 days or more. The governor has said if you're 21 days or older, you're presumed to recover. So we've begun to take those 21-day or older people off the list. We've also had to unfortunately take 85 people off the list who have passed away. So when you look at the actual number of active cases, there's about 230 active cases as of today in Lafourche. So it's not as grim as what, you know, the news media would, and no offense to those guys, but as you would think if you just clicked on DHH's website and go, oh geez, we have 1,034 cases. Not exactly right. So we're going to begin later this week of actually reporting that number instead of the screenshot that you've seen has been posting on social media with the state cases. I think it's important to tell people how many new cases we have, but when you look at it regionally, our growth rate has been, and we're talking St. Mary, Assumption, Terrebonne, Lafourche, St. Charles, St. John, St. James. Our growth rate's been about 1.5% to 2% at the most the last probably 3 or 4 weeks. So you're going to see a spike in cases because people are going out more, people are visiting restaurants more, we're going to church again, we're doing all this fun stuff. So I think we're going to continue to see a rise, but I don't think it's as grim as what some people may think it is. I also know that there are certain spots in the state, especially Lafayette and Southwest Louisiana, who are seeing a higher growth rate. It's finally hitting them, you know, after an 8-week lag than when we saw it. So I don't think things are quite as bad, but look, we're still telling people that if you have any type of health complications or you're immunocompromised, just stay home. There's no reason for you to go out. You have people getting your groceries for you or things like that. Keep doing that. Keep washing your hands, using hand sanitizer, wearing a mask when you go out in public. You know, if you're going to get in close contact with somebody, if you're going to church or something like that, we still got to, there still is a health risk out there. I don't want to downplay that. But I think things are a little bit better than they were, you know, the middle of March.
I would ask if you're going to do the active cases, if you could also include just what the change from the previous day is. I mean, that's the quick calculation I always do every day, see what that increase is. If it's a jump of 20, if it's a jump of 2. That's kind of an important number.
I got one more thing. In 1997, the LA1 coalition was formed, and Mr. Roy Francis, I remember him well. He was in charge for 8 years, till 2005. And then from 2005 till present, Henri Boulet took over. And I think we recently was awarded $135 million from the federal government. The state awarded us $150. And so there's a possibility that you'll see that gap between Golometa and Levee fixed one day. So this is like 22 years that's going on. So just remember, a lot of times I see you start a project, but sometimes it takes forever. And this is one. There's a lot of people that was involved with this. Some of them are not even here no more. But Henri Boulay, I can tell you one day, if he comes to your office, you're gonna write him a check because he ain't gonna leave till he gets his check. And that's the only way you're gonna get rid of him, if you pay him. So he's a motivator, and he gets things done. But Archie, if you wanna elaborate on that, I mean, I might have left something out, I don't know.
No, I kind of, you know, I don't know that it's a possibility. It's gonna happen. This point next year, we should be seeing a groundbreaking of that. So a lot of things goes to Henri for chasing that money for all these years and making up probably 30 or 40 million in private match from the majors, Chevron, Shell, BP, those guys. A big thanks to Tanner McGee, who, if you guys remember, a couple of years ago filed a bill and successfully got it passed by what a lot of people thought was gonna be a long shot, to take the state's BP fine money, the economic side of the fine money, and gives $25 million a year for the next 5 years to the LA1 project alone. So that made up the other 100 million. The Port Commission, so again, thanks to Chet and his board, they committed $5 million a year for the next 5 years to make up 25 million. And it pains me a little bit to say this, but props to you guys. And I say pains me because of the small number, but but props to you guys for recognizing the parish's need to contribute to that when we bonded out the Go Mesa money. So we're going to contribute a couple $1 million of our Go Mesa money to that as well. So it's something that's going to happen. A lot of people have fought for that, and it was good to see the announcement from Congressman Scalise, and good to see the tweet from President Trump, and it actually spelled Gola Meadow and Leeville right and didn't have an S, which surprised a lot of people. So thanks to everybody who's worked on that for 22 or 24 years now.
Very good. And certainly, Bouleys have been very important for a number of reasons to Lafourche Parish. It's funny, it's interesting you mentioned Roy Francis, who I hadn't seen in probably over 10 years, but I talked to him on the phone about 2 weeks ago. Ms. Boudreau. Good. Mr. Perilou. Mr. Wendell. Mr. Grew.
I did have a couple things. In regards to the COVID, I think it's important to note too that those tests, somebody tests positive and they test in 14 days again positive, that's 2 positives. And I have a person that I know well is tested positive 3 times and then tested negative. So that counted as 3 tests, so just keep that in mind. But I do get calls, and look, I'm guilty of it. I think we all need to be mindful that it hasn't gone away. The governor put out today that there was 1,356 new cases in Louisiana today, So it's out there. It hadn't gone away. But if you're out and about, people aren't wearing masks like they were a few weeks ago. So, we push it back 28 more days. And there are people that you're never going to get to wear a mask, but just be mindful of other people. It's hard when you're talking to these residents and they can't understand why this box store or this grocery store is making everybody wear a mask and this other one isn't. We can't police that, I can't police a family of 4 going shopping at Rouse's or Walmart. If they want to do that, they want to do that. But just protect yourself if you're nervous. That's all I can ask. We cannot make, as a government, a local government, these stores change their policies, So just keep that in mind. The second thing, tonight we had, and I mentioned this in passing, we had 5 items regarding signs. In the next meeting, we have 2 regarding speed limit signs. So because my district incorporates some of the city of Thibodaux, I do work with them when I get calls and people, have trouble deciphering the parish or city councilman about speeding and all in their areas. So I do work with the city of Thibodaux's police department on some of this stuff, and Officer Jacob, Lieutenant Hoffpower. But I'd like to try to really do something and get at the table with the sheriff and really talk about what we're doing with these traffic calming devices. And I'm sure Jim could probably help, and I know you talk about them on the fireman side, but I'd like to be involved in that if possible, and maybe even get with the city of Thibodaux. I have some stuff that I was going to give to Ms. Carlene and to administration to introduce, because I did a little research with the city on what they do now. So when a city councilman gets a call about some of the things we passed today, about no through traffic and things like that, they refer to an ordinance that they have on the books, and they refer to a site it's a Uniform Traffic Control Device Manual. You know, there's no reason Michael Gross should be making a decision to drop a speed limit from 20 to 15. You know, generally things pass. We've had people come up about Bayou Blue wanting to change things that have happened in the past. But some of these Facebook groups are real active, and I put some stuff up about the ones that I had on the agenda tonight. And you can't please everybody, you know. Like, man, we don't spend the money on these through signs, and there's nobody speeding there. Well, I'm like, look about 4 posts up, and the guy's got somebody on radar doing 60 in a 20, you know. Mine were pretty easy because I did involve the Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office and use their recommendations. A couple of them were putting signs up that had mysteriously vanished over the years. But I don't feel like we should be the ones that are saying, let's change the speed limit on something. I really don't, without some assistance from the Sheriff's Department. That's just my own 2 cents, but I'd really like to look into it because I know we all get calls about traffic calming devices.
Very good. Mr. Adams? Good. Mr. Jones? Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last thing, and Mike, I'll set up something with Lieutenant Doug Foreman from the Sheriff's Office and you and Councilman Wendell if he wants to be involved, and we can start to work on it. But just real quick, I don't know if she had a chance to introduce herself to all of you tonight, but Ms. Christy Lumpkin is in the audience. She's our new Economic Development Director that you guys appointed probably about 3 weeks ago. She finally made it here from Ruston and bought a house in Thibodaux, so she's now a certified Lafourchian. Yeah.
Outstanding.
This is the beginning of her second week, and she's hit the ground running and doing some great things for us so far, so we look forward to working with her and getting some stuff done.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Quite possibly the most important position we need right now. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll make a quick comments on Mr. Grow. And I know I do oftentimes when I get asked about traffic calming devices, encourage the residents to go out and purchase a solar radar. A few streets in Thibodaux, they've put them up, where the residents put them up. And because when people are made aware of how fast they're going, a lot of times they realize it. They say they've been real successful. Of course, most of the time people come back and say, well, I can't afford that. Well, it's kind of hard for parish government to afford too. When you got some streets that have 5 at $2,500, I mean, it adds up really quick when you have, I don't know if it's 12,000 streets we have. And if a street needs 5 traffic calming devices, you can understand how it gets really expensive really fast. Not to mention the liability that we've seen in the past. But they do have solar radar signs that you can put in your yard. They're operated by the sun, and they're very small and not that expensive. So those are an option. I also want to thank the administration, because typically on ordinances, I don't bring up children at play signs. There's no enforcement from law enforcement on it, so I don't put it as an ordinance. I just make a request of the administration, and typically we get them, and it's a lot faster, as opposed to doing it in an ordinance. So that's also an option. I do want to mention Councilman Melvin is out because his daughter had a procedure, but if he was here, we would be congratulating him on a half century of life. So Mr. Bo Melvin, happy birthday. He turned 50 years old today. The last comment I have is that I want to introduce my 3rd grandchild, joining my 2 grandboys, JJ and BB. Last night, my son Joseph and my daughter-in-law Jolie welcomed a baby, Juliet Jolie, to life. So unfortunately, due to COVID, I don't know when we'll see them for the first time, and being a close family, it's really odd. Normally we have the big family there, so we do welcome Juliet Jolie Otan to life. So I'm happy to have my first granddaughter. I'm sure she's going to be a little princess. Any final comments? Mr. Wendell?
Just real quick on the speeding thing, we talked about it, our speed and signs. I've gotten with Lieutenant Foreman with the Sheriff's Office several times over the last couple of months for some traffic studies. In the next couple of months, I'll have about 10 adjustments to speed limits, either higher or lower, based on the Sheriff's Office recommendations. Those guys do an awesome job. We have Motorman Harry Gilliard out in the audience who does a lot of that as part of that team. And the information or the feedback that I get from Lieutenant Foreman gives what the recommended speed limit is and all of those things. So I think an official traffic study from the Sheriff's Office goes a long way with deciding the safety of what needs to be done and what doesn't. I've been fighting speed limits for quite some time in that area, quite a few years through the Sheriff's Office Neighborhood Watch Program. I find that a lot of people misjudged speed. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe there are speeders out there, but I'll get phone calls, they're driving 40, 50 miles an hour down the street. I'm fortunate enough to do some part-time work for the sheriff's office. I have a police car with a radar unit in there, and I go sit, at the people's house, and, we run radar and judge the speeds. And a lot of time it's misinformation, but nobody calls this stuff into the sheriff's office. It's just a phone call to the council, and they say, oh, we need to change the speed limit, we need to lower this, we need to add stop signs, not realizing what all the laws are in regards to that. And the way that the sheriff's office set up is pretty unique, and every, I don't know if it's every quarter or monthly, I see a report that comes through email that says, we had so many calls for service in this area and so many calls for service. And people don't realize the more that you call things in that are detriment to the quality of life in that area, the more police presence you're going to have. Because every time there's a mark against a street or against a violation in that area, if 5 people call in speeding, you better bet, the administration of the sheriff's office is going to have extra patrols in there to kind of curb it. So I guess my advice to the council before we get too in-depth in this is to remind the people, even if it's calling every day, the same red truck is speeding, a date, a time. If it's every morning at 8 o'clock, that's good information for them to know because they can have somebody there at 8 o'clock every morning looking for the red truck. And I think that would curb a lot of the problems that we're having and a lot of the misinformation and the confusion around this. It's a very simple problem to address if we get the correct people involved. So thanks to Lieutenant Foreman and Harry and his crew for providing that information. It's been very beneficial as to some changes that need to be made, not only for safety, but also for setting up people to fail by having the speed limit too low, and it's just not attainable to take 5 minutes to get down a street and back up because the speed limit's only, 5-10 miles an hour. So yeah, we're going to have speeders because it's just an inconvenience and it's not needed. Judging by, and they'll give you all the data you need, the number of complaints that they've had, the number of radars run, the number of citations, the number of wrecks. It's some very useful information that comes from that group. So thanks to the sheriff's office. Thank you, Harry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Window.
I was just going to say,
Mr. Grove.
Doug did help me with both of the ones I had tonight. He's very, very quick. If you're not using him, he's very, very good at it. And the stuff he gets you back is factual if he does do a study. But please send me that information because one of the ladies I talked to today wants to buy her own speed bump.
Okay.
So she probably would be interested in that,
Yep. Okay, very good. Last thing I'll come is just thank everyone for wearing their masks. Thank you for respecting your neighbor. Please continue to wear a mask so we can minimize the spread of COVID. With that said, I'll entertain a motion by Mr. Perillo, second by Ms. Boudreaux, that there is no further business and the Lafourche Parish Council regular meeting of June 23rd, 2020 will be adjourned. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, 8 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 absence, that we are adjourned at a time of 1825 hours, 6:25 p.m.